Oh yeah, it sure is great to be back here in Las Vegas, especially for Halloween.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, sir, and I must say, that is an extremely creative costume.
Well, yeah, I'm not wearing a costume.
I never would have guessed that.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show, No Vacancy with Glenn Hausman. I'm absolutely thrilled that you are here today listening to the show. I mean, hey, without you guys out there listening, then I'm just talking to myself, which is pretty much what happens every single time I'm here in my house because nobody wants to listen to me. I even try talking to my cat. Doesn't pay attention to me. So thank you guys for giving me the courtesy of paying attention to everything that I have to say. And I'm absolutely excited today because, you know, we got Halloween is coming, my most favorite scary holiday of the year. But, you know, in typical Glenn fashion, I have yet to buy the candy for the kids. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll just give out some apples because I know fruit is a well-received treat. I know I always loved getting that when I was a kid. Be sure to read my columns twice a week in Hotel Management magazine or at hotelmanagement.net and follow me at Traveling Glenn, and you'll get notified when all the news shows, new articles are posted, when my podcast is going up, and when everything else that I do. And you're going to want to follow all the great news that I put up there. And also, before we get into our guests, I need to make that weekly plea to please like the show on iTunes. Give it 5 stars. I know it's a pain in the neck, but listen, you're not paying for this. Do me the favor of doing that. It makes me feel good, makes me feel happy, and it's going to help us create this community and be more exciting in the future. And, of course, send those comments to Glenn at rouse.media, Glenn at ROUSE. Media. Now, for today, I want to bring in my special guest slash co-host for this morning. His name is Johnathan Albano. He's not only the founder and CEO of Lodging Metrics LLC, but host of the Lodging Leaders podcast. That's right. I've got a competitor here on the show, and we're going to go toe-to-toe and duke it out. John, how are you, sir?
I am great, Glenn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. You know, John, you had me on your show, and I had such a great time doing it back over the summer that I really wanted to return the favor and have you on do my show. Now, I understand that, you know, we're going to have a little trouble here today because we're both used to doing interviews and not being interviewed, and now you gotta you gotta respond to my questions instead of asking them all.
Exactly. You know, I'm starting to come in grips with my control issues, you know,
right?
Because I want to lead the show. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, John. I'm extremely lazy, so I'm thinking maybe you could just take over the show for me this week. then I could just take credit for it, and it'll be a real win for me.
Yeah, it would be great. You know, look, I love your style. I think actually you should do the intro and the calls to action in my show because you've got that down to a science. So maybe there could be a trade-off there.
Well, thanks. I gotta mix it up because though I am absolutely delighted that everyone's listening, I gotta come up with something else. I keep meaning to say something else, but it's so programmed in my brain, it just comes out that way. Now, John, if you guys don't know John too well, I do encourage you to check out Lodging Metrics and the Lodging Leaders podcast. But also, I got to know John a little bit back when he was with AHOA. He was the membership, he led the membership directives there for 13 years. And the reason why I bring that in is because of last week's show. I spoke to Bruce Patel and Chip Rogers, and those guys are in charge of the association over there. And I think it makes a nice little package. You know, John, what was it like working over there?
I loved it. It was a really, really rewarding experience. I came on board back in 2001, and at that time, the AHOA only had about 5,000 members. Mm-hmm. Was there for 13 years, and the association grew to 15,000 members. And so right now, the stats are amazing. We're talking about 20,000 hotels in the United States. So about 1/3 of the hotels in the United States are owned by AHOA members. So, you know, I worked from membership manager to director of membership to vice president of membership, and I just learned a lot, but most importantly, I really loved the members. I loved going to the regional events, the annual conventions, and interacting with the hoteliers on a daily basis.
I got to tell you, I love hanging out with those guys too, and I would encourage you to listen to my show from last week, and in the coming weeks, I've already recorded it. I've got an interview with Jagruti Panwala. She is the newest board member. She is secretary this year. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting issues. Well, I'm not going to. I already did. You just haven't heard it yet, so you don't know what the conversation was about. But I assure you, it was fabulous. And unfortunately, I had to do all the interviewing. Unlike today's podcast, where John, I think you should really go ahead and just lead this discussion, because I'm very very lazy today on a Friday.
Well, listen, I do want to give a call to action, though, and I think your interview on my show was phenomenal. So please, anybody that wants to check that out, go to lodgingleaders.com/68 and hear Glenn's personality-driven content development.
Thank you. I appreciate the plug, John, and we'll make sure that we give you lots more plugs throughout this show. But, as much as we could have a mutual plug love fest here, I think we should actually talk about some important issues going on. And, last week, I had the distinct honor of working at the Best Westerns annual conference, and I hosted 2 major panels there at the general session, but I stuck around town an extra day in Phoenix, not because I love the city, and I do love Phoenix, but because I had the great opportunity to host a webinar for the good folks of SkyTouch, all based on the problem of keeping employees happy, lowering turnover and all that stuff. And it turns out, John, coincidentally, and yes, listeners, I do mean by coincidence, that you are really highly focused on this particular issue too. And I don't want to give it away, but you're starting a new initiative all regarding this. But I thought it might be fun to take some of the stuff that I've learned and that you're bringing to the table and talk about this major issue of employee turnover. John, we both know it's a huge, huge, huge problem. 70, 75%, even 100% turnover for some hotels in a single year. What's going on?
Yeah, it's a tough problem. I was looking at some stats. 2014, it was about 68% was the turnover rate in hospitality. 2015 jumped over 70% in hospitality. And so your stats there about the hotel level, some of them experiencing 100% turnover. It's just ridiculous. It's appalling. It's the highest turnover rate for any other industry right now.
Jeez.
And there's no excuse. And I think, when you and I were talking a little bit offline, the problem with this is that there are just so many facets of the employee engagement game that whether it's, you got to find the right people, you got to onboard them right, you got to interview them right, you've got to give them the right welcome, you've got to, do all the ongoing and reinforced training. You have to worry about retention, all these kinds of things. So if you drop the ball in any one area, like the 3-legged stool, if one leg fails, you're going down. And so you might have an amazing person, but you lose them because you failed in one particular area.
That's interesting. So what are some of the causes for people, failing in these particular areas, do you think, as a either human resources person or as a general manager or even the owner?
Okay, I would pinpoint it at 2 major issues. One is effective interviewing. So, I think most of us, we just interview based on what we learned from our prior bosses, right? So we've been through interviews before, so we sit there in the interview and we try to ask the smart questions. It turns out to be these like voodoo hiring techniques. And at the end of the day, they don't really identify whether or not this is the right candidate. You might be best friends with them at the end of the day, but you don't know if they're going to succeed in their role as a front desk manager or a general manager. So, nobody learns this. You don't have a class in college that teaches you how to interview people. So I think we fail here and we don't identify the right people.
I think that's an absolutely terrific point, John, because, there's been a few times in my life I've had to interview for employees, and I felt confused and lost throughout that entire process. I felt like I was pretending to be a human resources manager or something. I had no idea what I was doing or what questions to ask. I just had this presupposed notion of what I thought we should be talking about. Important questions like, hey, what would you say is your greatest skill and what's your greatest deficit? That just sounds like a load of bunk, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem there is, you tend to find the candidates that are really good at answering this stuff. They're great at spin, but it doesn't mean that that's really their character. And so you got to ask the right questions. And if you're interviewing 5 people for a position, you want to ask the same questions to all 5 people so you can actually measure the responses. So you're comparing apples to apples, and so that's a huge area where people drop the ball. The other area I think that's critical, and I've heard this over and over again, is that people drop the ball with the onboarding and the training process. I mean, I just interviewed a guy on the podcast. He's brand new to hospitality, really excited to be in the industry, worked for a reputable management company at an established brand.
Right.
And his training was a couple of hours. He was hired as a front desk agent. He started the job. They showed him a couple of things. He job shadowed, and he's done. Thrown to the wolves, and that's it.
Wow,
and
that seems to be like you're setting yourself up, or you're setting that person up for failure, because there are so many things that they don't know that they're going to be suddenly confronted with.
Absolutely. So think about it. Your retention efforts with your employee began on day one. What you do with that employee the moment they walk through your door is going to set the tone for their experience with your property from that point on. So, you got to orient them. Think about it. I mean, I remember I've gone to some jobs where I had a great orientation. I was walked around the building. I met department heads and I shook hands with a bunch of people. All that basic stuff. I got stuff like think about it, your direct deposit. You want to get paid. That's why you have a job, right? Well, a lot of times people forget to handle that detail. And then when payroll comes around, oh, by the way, you didn't get your first paycheck because we forgot to set that up. Oops. I mean, it's all of this stuff. I know it sounds like a pesky detail, but it's like so important. They need to understand what your mission statement is, what your vision is, why your hotel is in existence to begin with. What are your steps of service? You might have brand guidelines, but you might also have hotel level guidelines that you want them to know. So you got to orient them with that. Let's say you have a spa at your hotel and they're hired as a front desk agent. If they don't know about the spa and they have a guest that asks them about it, they're going to look dumb because they don't have any information. So orient them on all of the different facets of the hotel, the different products that you're offering, so they can be effective. You want to set them up for success. People want to feel like what they're doing matters, that they're bringing value to the table. And if you don't give them the skills that they need, you're not setting them up for success, and that's going to start the churn. I mean, they're going to get disenchanted with your company, and they're going to leave.
Right. That makes perfect sense to me. And I do want to throw out there that there is a certain percentage of employees that are going to turn over no matter what you do. And I think that's just the nature of this business. Now, I'm not saying this because I'm such an expert, but because last week when I did that webinar, I heard a great presentation from Dr. Michael Tews. He's an associate professor at the School of Hospitality Management at Penn State University. And one of the things he pointed out to me, John, that I think was interesting is that in select service hotels in particular, I would think in certain towns, there are a lot of younger college-aged people. So it's not really a career path for them, right? So I guess the idea is to not really keep them forever, but just try to keep them for long enough that you're not having a continually type of turnover churn, right? Yeah.
Well, and that, that makes a lot of sense, and that's okay. If you want to bring somebody on, if someone's going to college, that might be a job that they have for 3 to 4 years, right, or even as they're trying to get their career started.
Or in my case, 5 years, because I was a slow burn in college.
Look, my college was like 10 years. I should be like a lawyer or a doctor at this point, but yeah. I could definitely relate to that. But,
well, like an Animal House, maybe you could become Senator Butarski, right?
I love it. But think about that, though. If you could get a strong employee and develop them over time for 3 to 5 years or something like that, that is a good investment of your time and your energy, and you're going to create a great employee during that time. So that's a success. I mean, we don't expect a housekeeper to stay with you for 30 years. They may, but I understand that that's not the reality. But you can have continuity. You can have long-term employees if you develop them, if you give them good benefits and a reason to be there.
Right, and I think a lot of that is perhaps creating a team spirit and making them feel valued as an employee and as an individual within the hotel organization. Absolutely. And one thing that I like to think about is going back before you even start the recruiting process. Going back to let's get down to basics and look at the mindset and the culture within your hotel. So, what are you trying to create? What contribution do you want to make as the owner or as a general manager to your community? What kind of experience do you want to create for your guests? What kind of an employer do you want to be for your staff, for your team, for your associates? You got to start there and start, that kind of feeds into everything
that you do moving forward. So that you can bring that mindset, that culture, that why of why you exist into your recruiting process. So when you're interviewing people, they buy into that. They're like, think about Apple.
Right.
I mean, Apple is not the best paying company in the world. The guys that work at the Apple store, guys and gals, they're probably making, $30,000 a year, but man, they are so happy to be there.
I feel like they get paid in facial hair.
But think about it. I know Apple is a way overused example of employee engagement or customer satisfaction, but they got it right. The way they do that for the employees level, they want to be a part of. They buy into that vision, and so everything they do, the way I look at it, is everything that Apple does is kind of evidence of the why they exist and what they're trying to create. And so the products, the service that you give, is all supporting that mission and that vision that they have. And then the customers, I think, buy into it. That's why people like me, well, by the way, with my 16-year-old daughter that waited outside when the iPhone 6S came out, to make sure we got that first one, on that first day. Right. I bought into it.
All right, so was she waiting outside because she's 16 and didn't want to be seen with you? What was going on?
No, Vic. She had to have the gold iPhone 6S. It's a status symbol. Come on.
Yes, I know. I feel the same way. I need to feel value for myself through my gold Apple iPhone. It's the only way I know I'm cool. All right. Fact is, I have a Samsung 6, so I wanna send some praise out to Samsung, and I will not be getting the 7, obviously, but the 6, I love it. All right, John. I wanna go back to that culture element. How do you know that you're creating the right culture in your hotel? And if you think that it might be preventing you from getting the right type of people, is there a way to really evaluate that and change it to make it a culture that's better for keeping people happy and in their jobs a longer period of time?
I think that's a great question. So to me, I think you want to start with the culture. And so let's say, I think the first thing you need to understand is even if you don't have a culture, an intentional culture, that is your culture. Right. So the lack of a culture becomes your culture. So if you set out as the owner, as the management team, and you create this culture, chances are you're going to lose some people, and they might even be strong people, but they don't buy into what you're trying to create. That's okay. You don't want those people on your team for the long haul because they're not going to carry out your vision. So I think you need to get clear on that culture. You need to communicate it with your team on a regular basis and explain why this is the culture that you have and what you're trying to create. And then it can't be words. So many people create this mission statement or vision statement. They put it up on the wall, and it's a great soundbite, but they don't live it. So you actually have to live it, and you have to take an honest assessment of yourself. Are you practicing what you're preaching?
That's tough, John, because a lot of us don't like to take an honest look at ourselves.
Myself included,
Well, if I did take an honest look at myself, John, I'd have to make changes, and quite frankly, I'm not ready for that.
I get it. But going back to your question, though, I think a part of the culture, right, is so you're preaching that you're all about your staff or whatever it is. This is the we're trying to provide meaningful benefits for our employees and we want to create a family environment. Let's just say that is the culture you're trying to create. So you need to have connecting conversations with your employees on a regular basis. And hear me, this is not an employee review or a performance appraisal. This is just a one-off casual conversation with them. Hey, Glenn, how are you liking the job? Mm-hmm. Do you have any barriers to success? What are your goals? Where do you want to go in this company? What do you like most about your job? What do you hate about your job? Right. That kind of stuff. You might uncover that there's a dad that has a teenage son that he wants to coach their team or something like that. And if he could leave work 15 minutes earlier one day a week, he would be thrilled. But you're not going to know that unless you have the conversation with them. Right.
And I like what you said, setting it up to be more of a casual conversation, because if you say, come into my office, then I think everyone puts their guard up. Right. And then being defensive makes actual communication nearly impossible. So if you're just hanging out in the person's day-to-day chores and it comes out as part of an organic conversation, I think that's when you start to make those real connections with people, and they're really going to share what their true needs and desires are in order to be happy in that position.
I couldn't agree more. I interviewed a woman, Ruth K. Ross, on my podcast, and she's an engagement expert. She wrote a book on it. doing very well with this. And she talks about connecting conversations. And she said, look, you eat lunch, right? Yeah. Well, okay. When you have lunch, schedule an informal lunch with your different team members, and hear me, you don't want to ask about, are they planning to have a baby sometime soon or anything that would be obviously an HR legal nightmare. But they may offer that, though. But, if it's a casual conversation where they don't feel like they're under the microscope, they might offer some of that stuff. But you need to build a personal relationship with them. And I'm not saying cross that line where you can no longer effectively manage them, but you need to have a more human, less managerial or authoritative relationship with them. And they will open up to you. They'll share some of these things, these aspirations, and then you can find ways to support them. The other part of that, and I am guilty of this myself, by the way, when I was doing performance reviews, is you have to follow through. So let's I'm meeting with you, Glenn, and you say, I want to get some additional training because eventually I would like to be a front desk manager or whatever the case may be. So if I commit to something in that informal, that stay interview with that person, I need to follow through. I actually have to set a calendar item for myself 2 months later, 3 months later, whatever it is, to make sure that whatever I said I was going to do, I did. That is going to build trust and loyalty with the employee, and it's going to build respect, in your team. And so that person feels like, wow, John said he was going to do this, and he actually did it, and I feel like I'm growing in my career. I was thinking about changing jobs, but man, I love being here. I love what they're all about. I love how they take care of their employees, and I want to be a part of that.
That's great. I love that advice. But one of the problems, before that candidate even comes into the door, you got to figure out how to find them. And one of the issues that I'm seeing arise more and more and more when I talk to a lot of executives with hotel companies is there are so many places that are opening, hotels and restaurants and other service-based businesses that it's really tough to get that top talent to walk through your door. Is there something that you can do to put the odds in your favor that you're going to get better candidates?
Well, yes. The number one thing for sourcing, and I learned this from Jeff Smart, the guy's a New York Times bestselling author, PhD. This, the guy understands how to hire, people. And his thing for sourcing, the number one thing is referrals. So first, you want to look with your team. So if you've got a couple A players on your team, you want to source, ask them and incentivize them too. It could be $100. If we hire somebody and they stay for 3 months or longer, I'm going to give you a $100 bump in your pay or something like that. But do some kind of an incentive for them and encourage your staff. In fact, he encourages people to build into their job expectations. So when I hire you, Glenn, over the course of the year, I want you to refer 2 people or 3 people that you think are A players for interviews. Right. If you just, if they're a strong candidate and they make it through the orientation or the interview process, even if we don't hire them, you can give them a bump there, just as a compensation for doing that, or maybe a little bit extra vacation time. There could be other creative ways that you can do that to reward them for that, but definitely referrals. The other thing is referrals within your network. So, if you're part of you mentioned AHOA earlier, it's a great organization. It's really, really good for networking. So network with other people in the industry. You might be able to find referrals. And, one of the companies that Jeff Smart interviewed, Fortune 500 company, he actually measured it over a 10-year period, and he found that referrals were 4 times more effective in hiring the best candidates. And less, there's much more cost effective. You're not paying recruiters, you're not paying job boards and things like that. But he actually encourages people, if you're in a leadership role, to spend, even if it's 30 minutes, but every single week, put it on your calendar, spend 30 minutes sourcing top talent. So, think about this, Glenn. If you've ever been in a management role, what often happens is somebody quits with no notice. They get mad, they get disenchanted, they get a better job offer, and they leave, and now you're panicking trying to fill this role. That is the worst time. You have the least amount of leverage because now you're scrambling to get an ad up there. You're scrambling to read through 300 resumes and interview, and you end up compromising.
That's right. And you could probably, chances are, not find the candidate that's the best fit for that specific position. Exactly.
So, and I'm not saying this, for necessarily for a housekeeper. For a higher level position, you want to, you go to Starbucks and, we're always hiring, or, you see those signs. You want to be on the lookout for new talent always. And maybe that is to replace the B and C players that you already have in your team. Maybe it's just to build a relationship with somebody over time. But in my opinion, that is a huge value. If you can, you meet this rock star general manager and they work for another hotel in your market, build a relationship with them. Things, they may, I'm not saying that you want to go out there and steal other employees, but if you build a relationship with them over time, if they become disenchanted with that property, or if you have an opportunity that opens up, you might be able to incentivize them to make the switch to your property. And that's how you build the A players, because, if you have a relationship with them, it's not just an interview. You now kind of know that this person is a rock star. They've performed well in that role, and you know that they're going to succeed in your role.
Right. Excellent. All right. So now you've hired the perfect candidate. How do you make sure that you set the tone right for when they first come on board?
Well, I already talked, about the welcome,
Yep.
So and again, retention starts with day one.
Yeah, I'm thinking more about adequate training, getting them to know the other staff, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, solid training program. Don't make the mistake of throwing them to the wolves with minimal training. If they are well equipped to do well, that's going to translate into more profitability for you in a management level. If your steps of service from that employee are where they need to be, they're going to be effective. They're going to be actually bringing value to your hotel. And so they're going to convert. It's going to ultimately translate into better reviews and more profitability. So you got to get that right. You have to do ongoing training. So just because you had a 1 or a 2 week training program to get them up and running, you want to develop them, So yes, they started out and they're really good at their job in this one job, but nobody wants to stay stagnant. They want to grow in that job. They want to gain other responsibilities. So find ways to develop them over time and constantly test and measure their competency. So don't just assume that you release this new program or whatever it is. Actually validate that, and inspect what you expect. That's a Ronald Reagan term, I think. So just check. And it's, again, this is not a gotcha game. It's a support game. You want to help them succeed. You don't want to scold them for the mistakes. I mentioned before, the stay interviews are a great way to connect with them on a regular basis as well. So you're continuing to develop them. You find out what their aspirations are, what their challenges are. There could be a personality conflict. God, I've been through this. I mean, I'm sure you have. Where, you have one person on your team and they're really negative and it becomes toxic. It's like a cancer within the organization. But, so
it's amazing how that one Debbie Downer can really infect everybody, but all those positive people can't change the Debbie Downer. It's a strange phenomenon.
Oh my God. And what happens is your A players they start to lose faith in you as a leader. They're like, look, the writing is on the wall. This person is terrible. They've made all these mistakes and you haven't really done anything. You haven't solved the problem. So you not only, you're not only exposing your guests to this terrible employee, but you're also showing your other staff, the ones that you really do value, that are an asset to you, that you don't care.
Right. Great. Really interesting. All right. Anything else that you think is critical that you want to talk about this topic? I feel like I'm ready to go out there and hire some incredible people, get them inculcated into my company's culture, and then make sure I give them a lot of that ongoing training and support so they feel good and take care of their personal needs. Have we missed anything?
Well, the last thing I want to say is just think about ongoing retention. So you've done a lot of stuff initially to get them happy, set them up for success. But think about rewards and recognition programs. It could be cash award prizes. I already said, things like Associate of the Month. A lot of people do this. It actually means something to people, offering opportunities for some kinds of professional development, or even maybe pay for their membership in an organization like a HOA. It's a great organization. Membership is cheap. And it allows them to grow their personal network. And again, it's going to make them feel more valued and they'll be more engaged and feel appreciated.
Right. One reward not to give is free breakfast at your complimentary breakfast bar. I don't think that's going to go too far with them.
My bagel cost just went through the roof.
Yes. Exactly. All right. So I do want to say, John, that I love what you're doing. And now you want to help others build great hotel teams too. And they should go check out buildgreathotelteams.com. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We put together a free 3-video training course to help people find and keep quality associates. And we talk about sourcing, we talk about effective interviewing and the onboarding and the welcome, all stuff that we just talked about today, but we dive a lot deeper into that. And we're actually going to start sending that out on Monday morning. And
Nice.
we'll be sending it out over a 2-week period. So all you have to do is sign up. To get the free course, all I ask is your name and your email address.
That's beautiful. I gotta do something like that to get some more names and email addresses going. So I like your ideas. I like what you're thinking about. And John, before I go, are you familiar with Hard Rock, the Hard Rock brand at all?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm excited because the next interview coming up is with Marco Roca. He runs development for Hard Rock, and these guys are on a tear. I mean, he's developing so many new properties and so many exciting things regarding the properties. We're going to really peel back the layers of what's going on in that company and reveal it. But I do want to tell everyone out there that I recorded this interview just a couple of days before they announced that they bought the other part of the company. They had this weird situation where west of the Mississippi River, they weren't running those hotels and they were licensed to somebody else. That's no longer the case. So please don't hold it against me when we do not talk about that issue in the podcast interview coming up. John, thank you so much for being here. You're absolutely terrific.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Great. I enjoyed talking to you guys, and thank you so much for listening. And we will be right back after this message, but be sure you have a happy and healthy Halloween out there, and hopefully you won't have a situation like I did when I checked into that Las Vegas hotel at the beginning of this show. Thanks for listening, and we'll be right back.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to the No Vacancy podcast with me, Glenn Hausman. You're listening to this right now. That's right now. You're listening. But you're not the only one. Many others are too. So my question is, do you want to get noticed? Guess what? I can help you with that. Every single month, my content delivers more than 100,000 impressions. I know. I thought the same thing too. Now it's your time to get you or your product, service, or brand known by leveraging my network. I'll work with you to find creative solutions that are going to get your message to the ears and eyes that you need to attract. Just send me a note at glenn@rouse.media or find me on Twitter at travelingglenn. That's glenn@rouse.media, ROUSE.MEDIA. And while we're at it, Glenn has got 2 N's. Thanks for listening, and now back to more great content.
Do it.
All right, so here, of course, I feel like this is our annual ballroom conversation. So if anyone hears any noises in the background, that's because we had to find a quiet place here at this big conference that we're at, and they are, of course, cleaning up the ballroom around us because, well, I want to hear what Marco Roca has to say, who runs development with Hard Rock Hotels. I'm not sure all of you guys want to hear what I have to say, so we'll keep the noise going on in the background. How are you, sir?
Excellent, Glenn. How are you? It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again. I had so much fun talking with you the last time on the old show. Now that I got this new show, I'm like, I got to get this guy back on here. It was so much fun. And I want to learn all about what's going on at Hard Rock. But, I feel it important to say that this is kind of a brand that I didn't think I was going to get. I didn't think I was going to understand. I'm like, why is this here? But I started going to them, and I started really getting to understand how cool that brand is. And really like the one down in Florida in Hollywood. I think that's really symbolic of everything that you've been able to create since then. So I want to hear from you, Marco. Tell me a little bit about the brand, what your point of view is, where you're going in the world, all of that good stuff, so I could just be quiet for the next 20 minutes and you can do all the work.
Great, Glenn. Here goes a monologue. First off,
good.
Congratulations on the new show.
Thank you.
Newer is always better.
Yes.
And so really much luck on this, and I know you'll be tremendously successful.
Although I always found it highly insulting when I'd be watching a program to be like, this detergent now new and improved, and they're basically saying, screw you for ever using this, it sucked before.
Well, you'll do great, and you've always been the heart of whatever show it is, so wherever you're at will be successful.
You are too kind.
On the Hard Rock growth front, you did touch on Hollywood, and that's also my favorite property. Part of it is just the immense success that it's had. We're building a guitar-shaped addition to that for 800 rooms at a massive investment.
That picture that I saw looks so freaking cool.
Yeah, I can't imagine that we wouldn't win every single design contest once that hotel opens, and just very excited about that. Joining in partnership with Crystal Lagoons. And then, of course, the Dolphin Stadium, which is stone throw away, now being branded Hard Rock, and Super Bowl 2020 will be televised from there. You kind of put that together with our Atlanta deal, which is a Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, right in front of the doors of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and Hard Rock being there. So we'll have back-to-back presence on Super Bowl, which is never a bad thing.
No, not a bad thing. I hear that even more people watch the Super Bowl than a presidential debate, which surprises me.
It surprised me as well. We had a little presidential soiree in my suite here to take that in. A lot of people just really didn't want to miss it, so we skipped the cocktail party and watched the debate.
Well, that was a good move. I went to drown my sorrows at the cocktail party for having to deal with the political situation in this country today.
I don't know that yours wasn't the better move after watching the debate. So other places that we're going, we're very excited. We announced earlier this year, Times Square. But, when we go to places, it's not just about the destination. It's about the right place in the destination. So we decide we go to New York. It can't be just New York. It has to be Times Square. So we do our research on Times Square, and it turns out that there's a street called Music Row where all the music shops used to be.
Yeah, wow. I remember going to Sam Ash over there.
Exactly.
And then 3 doors down, Sam Ash. And then it was like Monroe's Music and all those kind of
Correct.
guys.
So we're right there nestled on between 6th and 7th. On Music Row, and that's kind of, somehow it feels like it was meant to be. So Times Square on Music Row. When we go to Berlin, we don't go to Berlin. We go to Berlin at Checkpoint Charlie.
Right.
So our doors will open
cool.
at Checkpoint Charlie. And of course, recently we announced
when is
London.
That going to open?
2018-ish.
That's pretty cool.
End of.
Yeah.
And when we decided to go to London, which is where the whole business started, it couldn't just be any deal in London.
Right.
So we decided to do the Cumberland Hotel at the Marble Arches with 900 rooms.
Wow.
So these are pretty significant deals for a smaller brand of 23 open hotels and 28 executed deals.
Well, I'm starting to get the feeling now with you guys, with the traction that you're getting, the vibe that you're getting. It's very similar to what W Hotels was like in the late 1990s. Everybody knows who you are, but there aren't tons of properties around. That's a pretty cool feeling, I would bet.
Oh, it really is. And I was part of that W launch, so it feels a little bit like Bouja Day.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was Starwood during that time. It was a great time for Starwood, and of course now there
is no
going through
Starwood.
Well, they're going through exciting times yet again. Yeah. But certainly the brand will take off. So we're very excited. We've executed 5 deals so far this year. We feel like there will be a minimum of another 10 before the end of the year, so it's going to be compressed heavily into the last few months of this year. And we're looking at some pretty cool new destinations. We feel like New Orleans will be one of those destinations coming up soon. A number of additional Caribbean all-inclusive type resort offerings. People just love those. When you can take your children, who, in the case of my children, 3 boys, can consume a tremendous amount of Coca-Colas. And at $12 at a Ritz-Carlton,
right.
That adds up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So here, I know what my bang is. I know what it's going to cost.
I've always liked the idea of the all-inclusive properties, and wrapping around your brand is such an interesting and fun idea, because a lot of the brands that are all-inclusive properties, they don't really mean much to me. I don't want to go through the names of all of them, but they all just seem kind of traditional, whatever, almost a fungible type of experience that you're going to have the same thing no matter what you go to. And I feel like some of those brands are all fighting on price point. But you're able to sidestep that by having a very distinct point of view and imaging behind you.
You're absolutely right. And, all-inclusive is a cumbersome offering. You need to put it in a place where you don't have a culinary experience. You can't put an all-inclusive in Paris, right? Who would go to your restaurants? You don't want to put an all-inclusive in New York because you've got the greatest food in the world anyway. So it has to be a rather isolated experience, very similar to a cruise on land, if you will. And so those are the opportunities we look for. We just recently executed 800 rooms coming in Montego Bay in Jamaica, so that was 2 weeks ago. You're the first to hear it, so we really didn't make any splash or news. But
it seems like you're making so many deals that you don't even have time to put out the news.
Yeah, we're not focused on the news. We're focused on getting the deals done.
When I spoke to you at this time last year, you were doing on average a deal a month.
Yeah, it's about a deal and a half a month now.
Wow.
So it hasn't grown too much, but we're going in the right direction.
It's very modest, but on these types of properties, a deal and a half a month is huge. huge, Marco.
It is. It's we're very excited about the growth. It really is
Right.
tremendous. And looking at 2017, again, some of the what's behind the tent, if you will, looking into 2017, I think you could look to expect us to launch a 3-star brand.
In probably select service kind of a realm would be my
Absolutely
guess.
select service, focusing and targeting millennials.
Yep.
Very cool, very well connected, a grab-and-go experience, and they call it barista during the day and activated bar scene during the night in the lobby area. And our merchandise will continue, but at a smaller level in these offerings.
Right.
So we'll still have merchandising. And the other area that we'll probably start to dive into will be some form of vacation ownership.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Where you can future pay your vacation.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting, and considering one of your competitors that enjoys flip-flops and stuff like that seems to be doing a big project in Orlando that I think is very much in that same kind of spirit. And I think there's room for all of these types of brands out there.
There really are. You need to find the right niche and the right taste for everyone. And we're fortunate that we maintain our relevance through music, and everything is musically infused. And who doesn't like music, right?
Right.
From 8 to 80.
Well, I think I forgot her name from Footloose, her dad, the preacher. He was not a fan of music or dancing. And,
Indeed.
Right?
And dirty dancing.
Yeah.
But they showed him in the end.
Important dirty dancing fact. A baby's last name was Hausman, which was mine, and my family used to do a lot of those summers in the Catskills when my dad was growing up. So
very
it's
cool.
very close to home. Although I never had a tourist affair with Patrick Swayze. But maybe in the afterlife.
But we do miss him.
Yes. All right. So it's interesting that you're going for a younger skewing demographic for whatever this new concept is going to be. But the typical Hard Rock brand, I think, is focused more on folks my age and older, 40s, 50s, that sort of thing. Maybe I'm wrong. It's probably more of a psychographic thing. But what is your main Hard Rock audience?
It's interesting because we've also at times felt that there was an impression that was the case, and again, it really isn't our age or your age, and it's really any age that can afford to spend the amount of money that it costs to stay in an upper upscale brand and enjoy an experience that is unique and create memories that are forever. So we see guests as young as early 20s who save up a lot and then come and spend 3 or 4 nights with us, and we see guys in their 70s and 80s enjoying it, and we see families, a lot of children running through lobbies, and when we party, we love partying, but we party with the kids too. There's kids doing hulas, and guys having a margarita on the side, and it's all maintained very much within a family-oriented, fun business climate.
I'm finding that now your hotel business, I think, in terms of notoriety and stuff, is starting to eclipse the restaurant side of things.
Well, that's a little bit to be expected. You get to service so many more people through a hotel than you ever do through a restaurant, and your experience is a 24-hour experience versus a 2-hour experience. So the lasting memory and impact that you have the opportunity to capture in a 3-day stay, 72 hours versus come into a restaurant and you're in and out in 2 hours, really does affect more of people talking about, oh wow, let me tell you about my experience in Cancun, or let me tell you about my experience in Ibiza.
That's interesting. So I love that you're in resort destinations, you're in urban centers. If you go with that select service product, you'll probably be in some tertiary markets as well. How does the brand function maybe differently for people's experiences when you're in all of these markets, and how does that align with what you believe the customers are expecting in each of those markets?
So there's little change in who we are. I mean, the authenticity goes throughout Hard Rock. I mean, we're authentic in everything we do. We're all about our memorabilia in a standard core Hard Rock, but that memorabilia will change from destination to destination. We want to be in Argentina and maybe capture Latin American artists, Shakira, Juanes, and have more of the Latin American artists. We also, if we're in the U.S., we want to capture what what does that city mean to music,
Right.
and who's famous from
So
there.
if you open one in Jersey, it'll just be all Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen.
There's a solid chance of that.
Yes.
and those are two of my favorites.
Right. Are you from Jersey originally?
No, although I spent 10 years in Jersey with Wyndham and
Right.
Realogy and other groups, I feel a little bit Jersey. And my dad was from Fort Apache, Bronx, so I feel a lot New York.
Wow, I saw that movie back in the 70s.
Yeah, boy,
that's
it
some
was
tough stuff over there.
Apparently was. I'm glad I didn't live it.
Right. So, very interesting. I love the memorabilia thing. And I remember when we were talking, I think you have a giant warehouse of all this memorabilia, so there's like no shortage of it as you continue to grow. But what's your favorite pieces of memorabilia that you've seen that are in one of your hotels or hidden away somewhere that you're planning to steal when no one's noticing?
Yeah, I wish I could. We're very, very careful to curate every single article in a very, very methodical way. So I love all Beatles memorabilia. I'm a big Beatles fan. But I got to say, our 80th thousand piece was Elvis's gold piano.
Wow.
That he gave to his mother. And that's a really special piece. I do have a place in my heart for Elvis, even though he didn't dig the Beatles.
Right.
I just saw that Nixon and Elvis movie.
How was it?
It was pretty terrific. I strongly recommend it. Really.
Yeah, I got to see that.
Great flick.
What a crazy thing that the guy shows up drunk at the White House and demands to see the president and then gets in.
Indeed.
I mean,
Especially with Nixon.
I tried that. I got tackled by the Secret Service and sent to Leavenworth. Yeah, I love the Beatles stuff too. I've been to the Vegas property most often just by happenstance. I go to an annual conference there, and it's fun to see the rotating, exhibits and what's new and what's different. And I'd love to get back down to Hollywood and see all the stuff that you have over there.
Or come to our office. We have some 30 to 40,000 pieces in our office.
Wow.
Out of a collection of 80,000, largest in the world. So it's a significant collection.
Why not have a museum?
That's an interesting concept. We lend a lot of our art to museums. We're not in the business of museums. I
Right.
think part of the allure of a Hard Rock is that the memorabilia is what really turns the lights on, and that's what people come to see.
Right.
So it's something of a rock museum with rooms in it.
Yeah, for sure. And the rooms, do they feature original stuff? Or
No, we don't put any memorabilia in the rooms. It would dilute it too much, and we feel like the public areas is for the same museum type of curating. It's something that needs to be shared, and,
Right.
and to share with one guest is kind of unfair to the rest of the family.
Unless, of course, you open one in Minneapolis and do a big Prince suite, and then you could charge $25,000 a night for it. That might,
Well, that might actually happen one day.
Right.
I'm not going to say it won't.
Yeah, exactly. But I could see if you have 800 rooms in all of these properties around the world, it's really not practical. But to have a couple of specialty suites that you could also rent out for private engagements and stuff like that.
Sure. And some of those do exist. In certain suites, there are pieces of memorabilia. It's rare, but
Right.
like you mentioned exactly on the larger properties, our average system-wide size right now is 563 rooms, so we tend toward the larger properties.
How do you make the economics of that work in today's day and age when everybody seems to be getting smaller and they were claiming for a while we're pulling back from full service, but you're going very counter to what the way the entire hotel industry is going. And let me just add for the folks listening that aren't in the hotel business, the select service, smaller property has really been the bread and butter development part of the business, and the larger size hotels that you're focused on seems to have become more of a sliver.
Well, it takes longer to develop a larger property, as you can imagine. It's like giving birth to a baby elephant.
Right.
Gestation period somewhere in the 13-month time horizon. Some of them happen, within 9 or 10 months, but nothing really happens too quick in the larger properties. Whereas select service is a very much easier offering to be able to go out and develop. The larger properties do not make sense unless you can have the occupancies that go hand in hand and the average daily rates, in which case more rooms are better, right? So, I mean, if you have a 98% full room count and you have 500 rooms, well, you'd love to have 98% of 1,000 rooms, right? So as long as those occupancies remain as high as we've been able to maintain them, and we're 18% higher than our comp set, So we are pretty confident that we'll continue to fill those larger properties.
How do you figure that out? How many rooms to build? Yeah, I mean, you guys don't own all the hotels. You're partnering with owners and developers. So do they have a role in that, or do you make a recommendation, or how does
It's really a joint effort, and there's consultants involved, and we very much rely on Horwath and HVS to help us find those right mixes and those right room counts, and it's demand generators. Is there the right airlift there? Is there the right comp set, and who else is in the market, and so what can you possibly expect? So a lot of study goes into it, and it's from both sides. It's from the developer as well as from the company, and always supporting ourselves with consultants that are out there.
Interesting. Is there one particular property that you think has the perfect amount of rooms for that market? Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I think San Diego really is a really good mix. 420 some rooms, and San Diego seems to always do very, very well. Beats its comp set. That's very good. I tend to want to say Orlando, but it's not the right room count because we're always at 96, 97%.
That's why you're building.
That's why we want additions.
Yeah.
I'd say Hollywood, but that's why we're building 800 more rooms.
Right. And how many do you have there currently? 14?
No, Hollywood, I believe, is in the 500 range.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh, no wonder why you need so many more.
So we need another 800.
Rooms. I mean, you go to that property, and it's always jam-packed, especially on the weekends. It's become, I think, a social center for Hollywood.
Oh, absolutely. And again, with a stadium right next to us, it's just going to be great synergy.
That's going to be pretty awesome.
Very exciting.
When I saw the drawings on what that's going to look like with it right next to the stadium, it's just what a great combination for you guys. So where's the Orlando one going to go?
If we expand Orlando, which is a big if, and it's been in discussion for some time, it would have to be on
room
property.
At the Universal
I think
property?
that if the partnership for Universal came together and decided that was a good thing to do, there's certainly space where there could be growth there.
Right, because I know there's another plot of land still available for another hotel development, but your property down there seems to be situated in a little space that I thought made you kind of landlocked. You couldn't build anything.
No, it wouldn't be a huge expansion. If we could expand, it would probably only be a couple of hundred rooms or less, but it would at least allow for those occupancy rates to, be released a little from those very, very high 90s.
It's insane. Universal Studios has done an amazing job transforming that whole complex since Comcast got in. They're putting so much money behind it, and that's got to be showing up in your bottom line with a lot more people staying and your ability to push your rate.
Yeah, and Universal's just been a tremendous partner to us, and we just really appreciate being a part of that, along with Lowe's.
Yep.
It's worked out so well for all three of us. It's a perfect triad.
Yeah, that whole resort, just watching that grow over the last few years, and needling Disney because they're able to get stuff done, and Disney takes 20 years to build one Avatar ride, and Universal's popping out something new every year. It's unbelievable, and
it's a tremendously dynamic group, and it really appeals to a certain age group as well.
Yeah.
My kids absolutely adore Universal. Just the older
so
kids.
Here's my prediction, and we'll listen back in 5 years or so and see it. Maybe with that giant plot of land that Universal has bought separate from that facility, a couple of miles away, and they build this big giant Nintendo theme park or whatever they're going to do over there, you'll have a select service Hard Rock Hotel maybe over there.
We sure would like that. I like your thinking.
Yeah.
I'm going to have you go over and chat with our friends at Universal.
I would love to do that because I would love to have an opportunity to go on that new King Kong ride. Honestly.
You're always invited, Glenn. We'd love to have you anytime.
Thank you. The whole reason why I'm doing this podcast is just so I could get to Universal Studios.
You're a good friend. We'd love to have you anytime.
Yeah, I would actually love to get some of those executives on there because I think the theme park business and the hospitality business, especially for the type of property you're doing, really overlaps in so many fun and interesting ways.
Yeah, I agree. We have another Hard Rock in Singapore and Sentosa, very close to their theme parks. So that's an interesting offering as well. I mean, it really extends, and you see it a lot here in Universal. It extends for the parents, especially where you don't have to go to the theme park every day. Maybe the parents can like rest by the pool one day and the kids are still happy, and kind of extend out that vacation where it's not just so much work to be in these long lines and ride after ride after ride.
So that Universal property opened, I'm going to guess 1999-ish, give or 97 to 99 in that range, I think.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I can't really. The older I get, the less I'm specific on dates. I've decided that when I think something's 3 years ago, it's now 5 to 7 years ago, right?
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So let's just say 98. We'll call it a 98, but don't send me hate mail for that. I know you have plenty of other reasons to send me hate mail, but not for this one. How has the brand itself changed in regards to the hotels? Because over this long period of time, you guys have learned a lot, and you probably changed things to be more modern with the times and be more on trend and create a deep, all of that kind of stuff. So how have things changed?
I think that the brand has matured a great deal. I mean, I think that we're not out just to do any deal. We're out to do the right deal for the brand. Very location driven and the places that we need to be for our music to be heard. And we're not trying too hard. I think there may have been a tendency early on to just try too hard, and that could be construed as lacking authenticity. We now go out and we give you a common area where you can really have a great rock star experience and create the memories. But when you go up to your room, even the rock star needs his rest. You got to get out there and you have to go and find a very comfortable upscale experience with a great sleep like a rock bed, and we don't want the brand to be overlaid and heavy in your room. I mean, I don't want huge guitars and hanging off of rooms, and so if we lightly embroider a guitar into one of the pillowcases,
I like that,
and really demure it down so that you don't feel like you wake up and you're like, oh my God, everything is so loud in my room and in my face, and the music is just a bit too much. You need to have a rest from that as well. So there's that. There's integration of a lot of systems now, high-speed internets. Some of the offerings that people are asking for, connectivity, being able to go from your phone to your TV, and some of the modern things, a lot of places to connect your gadgets into that we all have too many of.
Yeah.
So much of that.
Yeah, and I loved in Vegas was the first time I saw it where they incorporated your ability to bring your own music into the room and then use the room itself and the speakers in there to make that happen. I love that kind of idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what the brand is and will continue to be going forward.
Excellent. Any final thoughts, Marco?
No, I think we touched on all the good stuff, and just look forward to next year, and hopefully I can show you around one of these select service brands and point at some of our early successes in the timeshare world and vacation ownership.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing, hearing, experiencing, and that'll be great. And I want to thank you again for being here, and I want to thank all the listeners for being here, too. Send me an email, glenn@rouse.media. That's ROUSE.media. I'm pretty sure you know how to spell that word. And find me online at Traveling Glenn on Twitter and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And spread the word. Tell your friends about the show. Tell them to stay at Hard Rock Hotels. Marco, how can we stay at Hard Rock Hotels? Just hardrockhotels.com?
That's it, sir.
All right.
Thank you very much, Glenn.
Thank you, and I will see you next week, unless I decide to escape to Mexico and move into the Hard Rock down there and enjoy all those free Cokes. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, guys.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.